I'm Joe Halco, Director of Community Relations for Northwestern Counseling and Support Services, and welcome to another episode of NCSS Here for You. Since 1958, Northwestern Counseling and Support Services has provided access to high-quality services which promote healthy living and emotional well-being to the residents of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Over the years, as the needs of the community have changed, so too have the programs and services that we make available to assist children, adolescents, adults, families, and seniors. We take our role in the community seriously and strive to provide a continuum of the highest quality services to meet the needs of individuals who at any point seek assistance. This month's episode is titled NCSS's Employment Services Teams. NCSS has 3 programs that offer a range of services matched to the needs of employers. Although these programs have similarities, there are distinct differences with each as well. Whether an employer's staffing needs are for a full-time or part-time personnel, NCSS can match an individual with the appropriate skills through one of our 3 programs. All 3 programs provide considerable cost savings to the system when compared to an individual being unemployed. To discuss NCSS's employment services programs in greater detail, I'm pleased to introduce this month's guest, Brady Therrien, Employment Service Coordinator for the Behavioral Health Services Division, Heather Getty, Adolescent Services Team Leader for the Children, Youth, and Family Services Division, and Karen Phenix, Employment Training Specialist in the Developmental Services Division. I'd like to welcome all of you to the program this month. So, let's start with the obvious question. Why are there 3 separate employment services teams at NCSS?
Well, there are 3 different divisions that you just mentioned, and each of us targets our services and programs at a specific population. For instance, I am team leader of Adolescent Services. I oversee the JOBS program, and JOBS is an acronym for Jump On Board for Success. And it's targeted for youth. So it sits with my team, and we help support youth in our community accessing employment services.
And I can speak for the Behavioral Health Division, is we follow the IPS model, which is Individual Placement and Support. And it's a model that through the years has been proven to work with clients that have behavioral health issues, whether it's depression, schizophrenia, bipolar. We support clients that meet those criteria and follow them along the path of, resume building, looking for jobs, and supporting them when they receive the job they're looking to get.
And I work in developmental services. We provide employment services to people 18 years plus. In that we do job developing, we offer job coach support, follow-up services, and we partner with different community partners such as Hireability. We also can help with resumes, job searching.
So let's talk about the criteria that somebody needs, that they need to meet to receive employment services from one of our programs.
For the JOBS program, they have to be between the ages of 16 and 21. And if they're under the age of 18, they have to be within 6 months of graduation, or they have to be focused on an employment goal versus an education goal. So if they're still in school full-time, there are programs for employment services through Hireability that will work with youth that are in school, but we work primarily with youth that are either more focused on work or they're within 6 months of graduation, so that we're not taking away from the educational component. And they have to have a barrier to employment success, and that can be a social emotional disorder. For instance, a common one is like anxiety. They might have social anxiety. They find it really difficult to even go up and ask for an application. So they would be someone that would make sense to come to our team for my staff to support them in accessing and building the skills necessary for successful employment.
Yeah, and for the population behavioral health, it's really a voluntary program. So if they come to us, if they're in our programming and they say, I'd like to find a job, it's usually done through their case manager or an intake, and we work with them, work around them creating a goal and meeting their goal. So it's just that want that they want that in their life. We can support someone who's already working that comes into our program and maybe change jobs, support them in the job they're in with our supports.
The DS division serves individuals in Franklin and Grand Isle counties with a developmental disability and or on the autism spectrum disorder. One thing that Brady said that I think is good to point out is that people that are already working can still receive our services as well. Maybe they're unhappy in their job, they want to do more in their job. So again, we just help them get started and follow through and provide any support we can.
So I think in all the cases, in all three cases, actually, the opportunities are there. It isn't as if there's a lot of barriers if somebody is truly interested in wanting to seek employment.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
So let's talk about the benefits of clients who are working and what it means.
I think one of the most obvious ones is it increases self-esteem.
Yep.
It gives them a sense of empowerment. It builds skills that they can use not just at the workplace, but also in their personal relationships through communication, conflict resolution. There's all these things that come along with employment that are above and beyond the monetary value that you're getting from earning a wage.
Yeah. And I think the monetary thing is a driver for some folks.
Sure.
But for majority of folks, it's really that sense of belonging and independence at the same time. They want to belong to their community. They want to feel like they're giving back. It makes them happier. And it improves their mental health overall, which is our main goal in the end, is to improve their mental health
Sure.
by getting them employment. So, and some folks we work with haven't worked in a long time. So it's a lot to get there, but it's so rewarding when they get that job. And it's so nice as staff to be there to support them when they're working.
Yeah, I definitely agree. A sense of purpose and self-worth, self-esteem, source of pride, improves finances if that's why the person is choosing to work, connect with others socially in a workplace setting. Also, they are involved in their community, which is really important to a lot of people. Helps with communication and learning workplace culture, which I think is really important.
So, I'm sorry.
I will say a routine too.
Yes.
A lot of our clients, if they don't have a daily routine, it's a struggle for them.
Yeah.
Their mental health might, be worsened by the lack of a routine. So that routine that a job could provide, even if it's a couple hours a day, they might need to prepare for an hour and then kind of decompress for an hour. So that's still half their day that they're out there, they're getting stuff done. So I think that routine is large in our job to bring to people who want that job.
And I think when you look at the adolescent population, that independent living, many of them are in that transition age where they're moving from, being under their guardian's roof to wanting to be on their own. So the employment helps them get there.
Yeah. Well, in all cases, extremely important, and as you've expressed, it all starts with self-esteem, and I think, that fact of, as you say, the routine and everything, these are very important for everybody. And
I often think of it as, all of us at this table are working, and that really should be a goal that everybody strives to be. So I think just creating that low barrier, like you said, to access these services and then being able to provide that for the individual you're working with is huge. And that's the benefit, is just that, like I said, that routine and just the feeling of being in that community and feeling like you are a peer to everybody else is huge for our clients.
And the ability, being able to see yourself as a person who can contribute, who can do this. For a lot of our youth, they may have heard that they're not able to do that. Oh, you'll never hold a job. And then for them to see that, yes, you can. There may be some things that have to be, concessions made and different schedules or skills that, are specific to different jobs that are a better fit for a certain youth. But everyone has a place. And I think that's great for them to see that they're capable.
So let's talk about the benefits that a business derives when hiring one of our employment services clients from their lens.
I will say my staff have often been a mediator or a facilitator of conversation between an employer and a youth, so that when conflict arises, the youth are able to go to my staff member and go, oh, this happened at work or that happened at work, and my staff member can say, hey, let's talk about how to work through that. And then if that doesn't work, well, let's bring this to your supervisor. So they have a support person that they can call and get some of that, practice some of those skills with. And I think that's really important.
I would also imagine with the age group that we're talking about, is that something they really haven't had in the past, perhaps?
Yeah,
That
a lot of
support
times
that-
they haven't, yeah.
And I just, as you were saying, the extra care and support from the staff here, I always think of it as if an employer go to them, if they're going to hire somebody that's walking down the street, that person has probably the same chance of working out as our client does, consumer does, but we can provide the extra supports. We can go the extra step and maybe break down those barriers in communication, maybe keep a job that normally that employer would have fired somebody. So it's just that extra level of support. Because I always say to the employer, you are taking a risk hiring my client, but you're also taking a risk hiring anybody on the street.
Yeah,
you know?
sure.
So, and it's building a relationship. Our staff, me and Megan, build a relationship with the employer, so the employer knows we're there to support them in good times and bad. You know, we can't over guarantee anything. Not everything always works out, but we'll try again, and we're there to make a success happen and try to make that happen to our best ability.
I agree with a lot that Brady said. We are there for that extra level of support. People can come to us and say, hey, I'm having a little issue at work. I have one young lady I work with that always comes to me and says, I'd like to know how to word this better so I can talk to my supervisor. So she just needs me to talk with her, and then she's able to talk to her supervisor. I also think it creates a more diverse workplace and also higher productivity and retention rate for employer. I find that employers really like to support the people that we also support. It does make for definitely a more diverse workplace, and I find that's more important in businesses today, for sure.
Yeah.
I
Without
think
a doubt.
also there's a benefit of, we know our clients, so we're really good at saying, ooh, this looks like it could be a good fit. You know, so when we work with employers or with hireability to talk about what positions are open, we already in our mind kind of have, ooh, I have someone in mind that might be a good fit for that. And I think that's helpful too for the employer.
Yes.
So speaking of the employer, which community organizations does NCSS partner with right now?
Whew, there's quite a few. I will say one that we've had some youth go to that isn't local, but Job Corps and Virgins. We've had some youth that have gone there for career certifications, education, and exploration, and they've been pretty successful. And they're definitely local restaurants that our youth have worked at. I know Hannaford's has been a huge support for all of us, I think, all three of our job programs. So.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's hireability, Voc Rehab, name change there, but they support a lot of our clients. And, you know, in behavioral health, we don't have a budget to support the clients around employment, just our paid services that we provide, but no budget to provide them with, you know, clothes for an interview, a ride to work, you know, those kind of things. And that's where hireability can come in. They do have a budget. And if you open a case down there and create an employment goal, they can support a lot of that kind of stuff. They also do benefits counseling through hireability, which is important to our clients, learning how it affects their benefits when they return to work. Another program that we've used more recently through the Three Squares program is the ICANN program. And that's a program around similar kind of program as hireability, but even more services provided. Can help with stuff like gas and car insurance and car repairs that have historically been a barrier. Transportation's a barrier. So these community organizations help us a lot in breaking some of those barriers down. They're really there to make sure there's no barriers for someone returning to work, especially those paid barriers. And then employers, yeah, like you said, the TJ Maxx, the Hannafords, a lot of restaurants on Main Street. And then for a lot of our clients too, manufacturers, you know, have really, in the last couple of years, we've had a lot more clients get into manufacturing. So just really working with them to like, how do we make this work? These are not jobs historically our clients have held, but they are asking and we want to provide it to them. How do we make this work? So we've had a number of clients start in manufacturing jobs, and those are good and high-paying jobs. So those are really good partnerships that we try to partner with those employers around.
As far as employers, definitely TJ Maxx, Hannaford, Maple Fields is also a really good community partner as well. Hireability, I think they're awesome. They walk us through the whole way. We work with a transition counselor, and like one of Brady or Heather said, they can help pay for gas, they can help pay for shoes, they can help pay for whatever, offer trainings. There's so much for hireability. It's a wonderful service. Also CWS, which is our Creative Workforce Solutions, which is part of Hireability Vermont, I like to say, and that just gives us a lot of trainings. It gives us a lot of information, a lot of places that are looking for work that we might be able to support our client into looking into. Also, I know we talked about Vermont Adult Learning a little bit earlier. I haven't worked with them, but I do know that others have. And Northwest Tech Center has also been helpful for trainings.
And more recently, and just starting this back up, but CCV too, historically.
Oh, yes.
Offering some different kinds of certifications and trainings for our clients that match what their skill level is and what they're looking for. With help from Hireability, those are kind of starting back up now. So I think those hold a great deal of promise in the future for getting our consumers certifications and different diploma degrees that maybe they haven't had before.
So what is the job developer's role in setting up the employment services?
Yeah, so I mean, we've all done job developing, we all do job developing. So the first role is really meeting your client where they're at and understanding what they're looking for. So understand what you need to go out and talk to an employer about and what some barriers might be and what the client's interests and strengths are, I think is huge. And then it is going out to the employer and talking to them, seeing if there's a good job fit there. And just working with that employer, and it might take some time. It's a relationship. You're building and developing a relationship, and it might take some time. And then, as you just spoke with, like CWS and getting the larger group involved if you have a tough case. A client that you haven't had any headway yet, but you know something's on the horizon. Like getting CWS involved, because just the number of people who are out there job developing is large. So maybe they've heard of something. Maybe you can access the business account manager with Katie Coe and have her help you and go to that employer with her. Because she might have a relationship, or somebody else might have a relationship with that employer. So it's kind of long run of things that are involved in it, but I really think it starts from your relationship with that client and knowing what they're looking for.
I was just going to say, I think it goes back to you really have to know your client and know what their skill set is, and know what their strengths and their barriers might be, so that when you are talking to a possible job placement, you're able to make sure that it's as successful as you can have it walking in the door. Doing some prep with the job placement and some prep with your client, about expectations and boundaries and making sure everything's clear.
So yeah, definitely build a relationship with the consumer that you are working with. I find it very important to make sure that the consumer has an idea of what they might like to do. I'd like to work in a store. I'd like to work on a farm, because until they really know what they'd like to do, we can't just go and say, okay, you're going to work here. So building that relationship, getting to know them. We work on job goals, we set up appointments and resumes, connect job seekers with employers. CWS is great for that. Katie Co has relationships with so many people. So, we're never afraid to just send an email and just say, what do you got? Refer to Hireability for paid work experiences. And those are when Hireability will help fund minimum wage for consumers that are looking to see if they like a job and if the employer feels like the consumer is a good fit for that. I think Brady mentioned for Hireability benefits counseling.
Yes.
Super important. I never knew about this before I started working in this position. So important. A lot of people do not want to work because they are afraid of losing their benefits or not understanding what extra money will do to their income.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
And I spoke a little before, but I think another important role, being a job developer and talking to employers, is being there when something does go wrong. Because it's going to at some point or another. And just knowing how to approach the employer, but also how to react and work with your consumer that you're working with. It's kind of a dual-faceted role there that you want to kind of make sure both sides are understood, and maybe you have a meeting and maybe it's not appropriate, but just making sure the situation's understood by everybody so you can move forward from that event, even if it was a bad one, I think is important. You always want the successes, you always want, everything to go smoothly, but there will be times when it doesn't, and just making sure that we're there for those employers, because they will remember that.
I totally agree with that. I think follow-up is very important. I make sure that every business owner, manager has my card. I mark what number is the one to call, reach out to me for any reason whatsoever. I think it's important that they're supported as much as the consumer is supported, for sure.
And you've all mentioned, and I think this is really an important part of the puzzle, is organizations like Hireability that you all collaborate with, and they collaborate with us, and that there are these other programs that you're able to tap into that if we were a standalone, we just wouldn't have access to that.
Yep.
So that goes to the importance of all this collaboration with state organizations and and others that can assist.
Yep.
I think everybody wants the same thing at the end of the day,
Yes.
which is for these individuals to be employed, so that again the whole self-esteem, they have some extra money, all the things that go along with employment that are important from a treatment standpoint as well.
Yep. And I think this speaks to the local office Hireability and also NCSS. But when I'm talking to other people who do my job in the state or in different meetings, I think we have a really good relationship with our local Hireability office, which helps us and helps them. And we both understand it is for that. It's for the client at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's for that success. We both provide something different to make that good match. But I do think it speaks to the agency, but also it speaks to the Hireability office here in St. Albans that we do have a good relationship, and they do great things for clients, as we do.
For sure.
Yeah, I would agree. Our relationship with our local Hireability office is wonderful.
And I realize that all of these various programs that have parameters, but the interesting thing is that I think you've all shared today, everybody's an individual, and every situation is different. No matter what the circumstances are, there's no way that two people walk into your office throughout the course of a year or
two
or
or
two or five who have exactly the same scenario or situation. There's always some different, twists and turns, and the fact is that you've got other community partners that can work with you and try to figure out what's the best way because once again, you want a positive outcome. And like Brady said earlier, all things don't always end up being perfect.
Yep.
But the fact is, you still go and you go up to bat and you try to get a hit. So
I tell our youth all the time that you learn a lot about learning what you don't want to do, just as much as you learn about what you do want to do, right?
Yeah.
Like there's learning opportunities in all of it.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a lot of growth in finding a job for a consumer because, maybe you really don't want to leave the house for more than one day, or maybe you want to bring your video game and, just learning, again, that workplace culture, what it takes to really be an employed person. You have to work on that. You have to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
now, speaking of successes, is there anything that you'd like to share? I mean, a lot of times, or I would imagine there's some times where you have a client where you think this is really the right thing for them and maybe they fight it for whatever reason. But do you have any stories that you'd like to share that were really successes that maybe initially didn't look like they were going to end up that way?
I worked with a youth a few years ago that was like, no, I'm not really interested in working. And we're like, okay, but it was a goal of the treatment team that they work. And then they got to a point where they were like, they kind of wanted some income. And there was a sense that this youth would be very hard to place. They'd be very hard, to get a job. They wouldn't do well in an interview. And on a whim, we drove up to a place, handed in an application, and the person there was like, well, we could do an interview today. And I was like, and the youth looked at me and I said, I'll stay if you want to do like let's do it if you're or we can schedule for another day if you're not ready because this was a youth who had a little bit of social anxiety and the youth was in the moment and was like, let's do it, and I was like, all right, did the interview, and 35 minutes later comes out beaming, I think I start next week, and I was just like our only goal that day, and it had taken me 3 weeks to talk this youth into dropping off that application, was to drop off the application. I was just walking in to drop off the application, and we walked out with the job.
Wow.
So, and the youth stayed there. It was well over 6-7 months before they ended up moving on to a different job. So that's a success.
Boy, that is. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have a few that stick out. One gentleman has a pretty good work record and has worked off and on benefits, but really just wanted to do something more like a career, and he's thrown a few ideas around, but then he settled on getting a CDL. He had a CDL B before, and he wanted to get a CDL A to drive like over the road truck or even local truck, and it happened. It just took. It took, the services in NCSS, all of his services at NCSS, psychiatry, case manager, me, but it also took hireability. It also took CCV, it also took VSAC, and then he got it out of the trucking school in Milton and works right now for Nokian Tire, So it's really just a good success, and it's something that he wanted to do. Is not on benefits anymore either, so that's always a success there. So. And then the other one was a client that lived in some of our residential programs. Definitely was on everybody's radar. A lot of stressors had happened in a major stress event. And I think what changed for her was finding that job. And she's worked at that job for 5 years now. Got a very solid team around her now. And it does take a lot of supports. But that job is, I think, so key to her overall recovery and the overall positivity that's come out of the last few years. And I think that employment piece is huge. And she works for a good employer too, so that's always a good match.
It's always great, because again, I know everything doesn't always end the
Boy,
way
it does.
anybody
It's
would
nice.
like
Yeah,
it, but
it is.
these successes are certainly what
Yep.
really, that's why you do what you do.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's always interesting to hear about circumstances that maybe didn't look like they were going to
Yep.
end up well,
Yep.
and that it works out for everybody. And once again, we have to commend the employers for giving our clients a chance to take on some of these positions as well. Because if they weren't willing, I mean, even if we had clients who were clamoring for positions, but there was nothing available, that would be a tough situation. So,
Yep, for sure.
that's really, really good, good stuff. And as we were saying earlier, it all starts with the whole self-esteem piece and goes from there.
Yep.
And the other thing, and as you said, Brady, you have some individuals who actually come off of all the programs, and even those that are on certain programs, when they're earning money and what have you, now you have an individual that's paying some taxes and all of that works in a positive way for the system. So,
And I don't think we pressure clients to want to do that, but when they do file taxes for the first time, or they do, have some positive news benefit-wise, it's definitely like you want them to be proud of themselves. You want to reinforce that is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes it kind of come across as like stressful. Like now I got to do taxes, but it's like you might get a tax return. You might get money back. You can't promise those things, but you want to be there to support and encourage those positive moments.
Yeah. Well, I want to say to all three of your teams, great work and great job, and keep up the good work. And, I'm sure those that you're serving that have been employed are grateful to you for all the work that you put into it and with our community partners to make it happen.
Thank you.
So with that, I do want to thank my guests, Brady Therrien, Heather Getty, and Karen Phenix, for being on the show today and sharing their insights on how hiring NCSS Employment Services clients can result in a win-win for the employer and the employee. I also want to thank you, the viewer, for spending time with us again this month. You can learn more about NCSS and all of our programs and services by visiting ncssinc.org. I'm Joe Helko, and I'll be back next month with another episode of NCSS Here for You.